And they almost have this like embarrassment that they're not using all of it. It's like, there's no obligation in purchasing it to have to use all of it. The obligation is that it has to have impact on your business. Welcome back to the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. Today, we've got Pete Romano of Segwitch and Segwitch.
I know
with the soft G.
I know the
Canadian
have the problem with the hard G's and the soft G's. Yeah,
I know it's true, but we have a really good thing with the bacon, as we talked about earlier, so we're good. Of Segwitch, and you know, one of the things that I love, while I have a hard time with the G, I definitely don't have a hard time with what you do, which is automating business processes. You run a technology company, and you know, you've got a lot of things around the sales, the marketing, automation, which is near and dear to my heart. And so I'm really super excited about this conversation.
Yeah, well, Steve, you know, we've had some time to get to know each other, and so good people surround themselves with good people. So I'm sure your audience are a lot of great people. So can't wait to meet them and just let's have a great time just chatting about tech and all things future.
You know, one of the things when we talk about tech is, and I think you and I are in alignment on this, is most people when they talk about tech, the first thing they do is start talking about tech. And I think that's one of the things that we kind of hit a note on really well, was to really be successful at talking about tech, the first thing you need to do is not talk about tech. It's like the first rule of Fight Club is don't talk about Fight Club. Well, right. The first rule of tech is don't talk about tech. It's talk about processes. So talk to me a little bit about the mindset around that and why that actually matters in being able to design and support a really good business system.
Yeah. So, thanks for that question. In forming this company that we founded around 2017 or so, it was important. I remember it was an interesting mindset because I didn't know what to say then. And as I started to dive into what we do more, a lot of passion started to come out on various ideas surrounding our technology company. And as I started to build and just start to put things out there to my clients, I started to hear a lot of things about, well, Pete, stop calling what you've done a CRM. Stop doing that. Like, it's not a CRM. And this was coming from smart colleagues that are in these CEO groups, and they're at the top of their game, but they couldn't really put it into words what they were really feeling. And I would try to ingest that and try to filter what they were saying to see, like, well, what is it that they're trying to communicate to me? And I started to recognize that there's a major gap between what these technology companies are providing that they call a CRM, that they call automation, and what the businesses are that are using them. And that gap is that these CRMs are treated like these appendage tools, like it's like your screwdriver over there that you need when you need a screwdriver that you grab when you need, or your hammer that you need. But the CRM and the business tech is in service of your business processes. And so to your point, I say to my clients, who have tried this and they've tried that and they've tried HubSpot, they've tried Salesforce, they have a MailChimp account, they have this. They're as the most soured people on all things technology, but they keep trying. And I say, well, because you've been going about it wrong. You're the what's that expression? You're like the tail that's wagging the dog. And instead, what's wrong with this situation is you haven't sat down and laid out all of your business processes without worrying about the tech. And so when we first start our tech conversation, it's not about tech at all, to your point. We are sitting there figuring out, how do you want to run your business? If you could just do anything that you wanted, let's figure that part out.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense. I mean, when we follow the history of CRM, and we're going to use that word for a moment, and I'm with you on that. I think using a word kind of pigeonholes into the product, not the pain that it solves.
Right.
And when I started back in the 90s with CRM, it was called contact management. Mm-hmm. And then it switched, with the Axe and the gold mines and that sort of thing. And then it switched into Salesforce automation. And that was with the Ardexuses and the, some of these other companies that are out there. And then, Salesforce.com came in, and then that was just, my CRM, my SAP, or Salesforce.com, and all these other programs came in. And then, then they became the human resource management, and became these big, huge leviathans that were created. And people are buying these big products, and then they just, they don't really realize what they do. And they're like, the first thing you always hear when people talk about their CRM system, you probably giggle when I say this, is what CRM system do you use? Well, let's just pick on HubSpot for a minute. It's like, oh, you use HubSpot. Great. Yeah, but I don't really use all of it.
Right.
And they almost have this like embarrassment that they're not using all of it. It's like, there's no obligation in purchasing it to have to use all of it. The obligation is that it has to have impact on your business.
Yeah, well, and you know what? That's a common thread that I've experienced when I've started to form the Segwit company, was that people they almost feel like their CRM is this abusive type of partner in a relationship. They come to me, like you just said, they're coyed and they're kowtowed, and they say, yeah, I have a CRM, but I just don't use it, and they feel really bad about it, like they're neglecting their spouse, or they're neglecting their children. And so I'll welcome them warmly and say, well, it's okay, but why do you feel that you need to be using what do you mean use? Oh, well, I don't record my meeting, I don't do this, and I don't log my this, and I say to them, well, I wouldn't want to do those things either, because that sounds miserable. And the difference between where they are in their mindset and where they need to be is a whole revolution of mindset shift.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then you have the exact opposite people, where they almost become Luddites, because they look at the technology and they've gone through so many iterations of a technology first implementation. And then you reject technology entirely, rather than saying, look, there's things that we can do. And this is where it comes to the quadrant approach of looking at how do you figure out where you're going to focus on when, considering not 100%, but considering implementing technology. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that was something that I really liked as part of our earlier conversation.
Yeah, so I think that what you're referring to is that businesses, if you're in business, chances are you didn't block off a whole month to learn and train on a new piece of software. You have a problem. You have you know that your organization might be disorganized, or something, there's a gap in this business process or that business process, but you've got your day-to-day chores that you need to do. You've got emails to return, you've got services that you need to deliver. And so what's happening now, like if we could put a framework around what we just talked about people not getting the value, not using the CRM, what I think a framework to think about that is that they've signed up for this long haul type of project, but they're getting minimal value out of it. And they're finding that they have to put in a lot of effort to get minimal output. And a lot of effort, it could be just signing up and just reading about the tool. And if they figure out that this is going to take work to achieve, then the whole CRM industry would collapse, because these companies make you feel that just by creating an account and just putting in your email address, all of a sudden your business problems are going to be washed away with very minimal effort. And so they sell this vision, and people expect a lot of lift from these tools, but that's just not realistic. And so and the software companies are in a bind, because people are inherently lazy. People want the most bang for the least amount of money and the least amount of effort. And that's been our trick as well, is to figure out, well, how do you deliver a big benefit to the company with the least amount of effort? And deciding that has all sorts of chores within the development of our software. Is, well, okay, well, do we do this? Do we do that? Do we set up this? And so you can't even answer that question with just something short.
Yeah, and I think when you parallel that to anybody who's looking at, if when we look at systems, the systems could be technology, but even if you're not even looking at technology systems, the systems could be people. And the idea that when you're trying to assign people into a system and you're looking at saying, okay, well, where do I sit? So say, for example, I'm a plumber and I want to grow my business. It's been going pretty well and I'm adding some people and that sort of thing. I'm thinking, okay, I've got a couple other plumbers out there now, but I'm staying up late. I'm doing my taxes. I'm doing all my invoicing. I need to hire somebody who's going to be working in the office. Okay, well, what does that look like? And they start building all those things out. The thing is if you would sit down at the very beginning and saying, look, I want my business to get to 100 million. What does a business at 100 million look like? What does my business look like today? And how do I get there? And where do I fit into the organization? And if I realize that there's going to be people who's going to join my organization that are going to be better than I am, and I'm going to be so happy to bring them in because they're going to do such a great job at the things I don't do well, and they're going to create high impact and value into the business, it's going to make a massive impact. So by looking up in the trajectory to the future and drawing your business to there and looking at that saying, here are the things that are my quick wins. Low change, like you talk about your quadrants, low change, high return, boom, hit those right away. And then we're going to set the path, of course, of action so we get into high change, high return stuff. Those are the things we're going to do, but those are going to be over time as we're realizing our quick wins.
Yeah, and I love that exercise. When we meet with clients, there's no holds barred on your imagination, and so this exercise of imagining what your company is when it's handling twice the amount of customers, or 3 times, or 4 times, or 5 times. Well, that's a really useful exercise, because you might be that plumber or that electrician, and you look around your office and you have one assistant and you have you and you're managing the implementation team, and maybe you have one really reliable technician that you could defer some of the work to. Now you ask that person to imagine, well, what happens when you have 3 times or 4 times or 5 times the business, and maybe they don't know what the implications of that are. And so you start to explain, well, you're going to have 3, 4, 5 times the amount of phone calls. Who's going to handle those? You're going to have 3, 4, 5 times the amount of quotes that you're going to go on to. Well, right now you're the only one that can go out and give estimates. And so how are you going to handle that? How are you going to handle 5 times the amount of invoicing and you start to recognize that if you really start to plot that out, you might start to realize that the change in your company is not just a linear change in order to get from this current state to this imagined state, but you're going to have these plateaus of different things. And it might be a plateau of a process, it might be a plateau of staff, it might be a plateau of your tech stack. And so, yeah, I find that to be one of the most useful exercises in getting people to start cleaning up their businesses.
Absolutely. And I think as you focus on the business and you're sort of stepping away from that altitude to look into it, I think it gives you so much of a better perspective, because if you're in the business and looking around, you look at it from the perspective of an operator. And I think that's a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the small business community, I think Michael Gerber said it best, is that you're a technician, you have an entrepreneurial spasm, and now you don't want to work for that boss who looked at you the wrong way anymore. I'm a chef. I don't need to work here. I'm going to start a restaurant. I cut hair and the owner's a jerk. I'm going to open up a barber shop. Or that story is unfolding every day at every county, every city, all over the world, in fact. And it sounds like a natural evolution of things, but what ends up happening is the technician who formerly was the chef or formerly was the electrician now has to do a dozen or 2 dozen other tasks that they were never trained in and have no idea about. And so the takeaway is that having an electrical services company is way different than being an electrician, and running a restaurant is way different than being a chef. And you got to recognize that at the get-go and start to fill in, well, what is all of those other mysteries? Like, what is it? What are the things that I don't know that I don't know?
Absolutely. And I think the idea is the pivot of the mindset. I think you hit the nail on the head when it looks at a lot of people when they start their business, they're running away from something. And once they get into that business, they have to start running towards something. And as they're running towards it, they have to identify what is success in that role. Because if you're going to be a journeyman in your business in the sense that you're just going to be a plumber, and not knocking plumbers, I love plumbers. But if you're going to be in the plumbing space as an operator first and last, your business is going to hit a certain scale and it's going to plateau. But if you're going to say, I want to build an enterprise, then you're going to have to say, how does that look like surrounding me both in people, both in processes and in technology?
And so, yeah. And so for all of those reasons, because we know that we're not going to get plumbers to stop opening plumbing companies and chefs to stop opening restaurants, like not every person is going to buy into some franchise step-by-step type of company. We created a framework that it really involves if you could understand and plot what your customer's journey is from the beginning of the process all the way through the end of the process. It's an easy to understand. Any entrepreneur can do this. Then that's the framework that we settled upon for figuring out, well, how do we take this plumber and create a scalable business out of this person's operation?
And I think there's a lot of parallels that you can have when you look at those journeys that are similar between plumber A, plumber B, and plumber C. And it's just like conversations. I always have this joke when I'm training sales reps and we start talking about scripting. And you have the people who are very anti-scripting. I don't script. It's just not my thing. I don't script. I don't follow script. Everything is just off the cuff. I make things up as I go. I'm like, really? So we're going to try something. We're going to try this. I'm going to say hi. You say hi back. I say, how are you? You say, fine. You say, good. Great. We just followed a script. And so we all have scripts in our lives and we all have scripts within our business. And that's where it can't be completely custom from the very beginning. There's going to be things that you're going to find that are uniform across a lot of the businesses, and you can apply those into those businesses once you've evaluated the processes.
Yeah, exactly. And so, what we found is that at least we deal mostly with service providers, and so home services or professional services. My first company was a marketing agency, and I'll be the first one to say that running a marketing agency is probably one of the hardest businesses that you may ever choose to go into. It's really like, to me, it felt like I was making custom furniture every single day. And so, yeah. And so the delivery, because services really involve, there's no machine churning out your work. It's not like you patent some object and then you have a machine that just makes that object and you can turn that machine on or off at will. Instead, you have to string together the contributions of multiple humans to deliver process. And so those multiple humans have to, like you said, go out and do sales. Okay. Well, before they have sales, you have to have other humans that are doing some of the marketing to drive the sales. All right, well, then the sale has to come back and you have to do a discovery session with them. All right, well, maybe they're ready to go, maybe they're not. So you need to follow up with them. And then if they are ready to go, you need to figure out a contract. Okay, now they sign the contract or they don't sign. So you have to follow up with them some more. But then you need to onboard them into your professional services. You have surveys and questions you want to ask. And then, only then, after you do all of those previous steps, can you actually start to deliver the work that you went into business for. And that has all of the inherent complexities of delivering the work. And then if you're really on top of your game, you have a good follow-up system to take care of that client long after you've completed that job. And so, for instance, you could see that that's a lot of steps besides just the delivery of this service.
Absolutely. And this is where I think when we look at the modern salesperson versus the roadie sales lone gunman from the 50s, smoking in the elevator, that kind of a thing. The new salesperson is really a convergence of three things coming together, and it's the three departments I think are really integrated between them. And that's your marketing department. That's your sales department. That's your technology department. Because the more that you can create that integrated environment, the better you can support that process through it, the whole being greater than the sum of the parts. And as people can see that fits and each of those roles are valuable in the process, the better the client success is going to be.
Yeah, you nailed it exactly.
Yeah. That's interesting. And when we look at the future where we see, I mean, technology has been moving at such a crazy pace. So, this is one of the things that I'm very interested in being in the technology space. We'll hit that for a little bit. What are you seeing as directions? What are you seeing? What are people, number one, adopting really well? Number two, wanting, but maybe not adopting really well? And then sort of what's on the future path that you're seeing that people need to get excited about?
Yeah, well, I think we see now that AI has wedged itself into every aspect of every tool that you can subscribe to, and so we're using that as probably a lot of other people are using it. We're building registration processes that are able to analyze our clients are businesses and professional services businesses, but they're not great marketers. They don't know really how to communicate in the form of marketing speak. But in order to be effective in the world, you need to learn how to communicate. And so we've been writing a lot of custom GPTs that are able to take in a little bit of information about the business, a little bit of information about your customer personas, a little bit of information about the industry that you're in, and then output full series of drip campaigns, outreach campaigns, direct message campaigns. And so that's been a real revolution in how we do things over at our automation company, because that means that, like we said earlier, the business that signs up doesn't need to compose all of this work, because that's been a huge barrier, is just getting this outreach content composed. And so I don't know if we want to call it a race to the bottom, but as I think that the people who have gravitated towards technology in the past versus the people that are technologically shy, or like the Luddites, you're going to start to see just a growing chasm. But it's really interesting because I have a music background, and I like to play. I played in bands my whole life, and so I started to think about this. You have stations like Pandora and Spotify. They're going to start to just have AI generated music with AI generated lyrics. And maybe one silver lining about all this technology is it may drive us back to the live venue. We'll have a much more appreciation, a refound appreciation for live music, live things, and all things human.
I agree 100% with that. And I was at a conference actually with Gary Keller of Keller Williams, about 18,000 agents down in Vegas. And they resonated that huge. The idea of using the term belly to belly, that in-person communication is something that's becoming critically important now, because number one is verifying authenticity. I mean, we could be having this conversation and you could be an artificial AI bot for all I know. And we can, and you're like, caught me. But we don't know that. That's the direction that AI is going. And the idea when we hire AI, I always say I always call it hiring AI. I know it's a technology, but I think there's a mindset that has to come in with it, because it's not just like a program of A or B. It's a program of, we're going to think which is the right answer, not we're just going to direct where the right answer is. And so AI will make some amazing strides in making the right decision, but then there's other times where it's going to go completely off the path. And that's why you look at it as an employee rather than a technology, you'll be much happier with it.
Well, yeah. And so I've even started to recognize that AI copywriting is not a gift that just endlessly gives. AI generated artwork all has this sheen of AI ness. And so it's just interesting. Like we've you know you're not going to know what you can trust, and so to start to figure out what we got to figure out mechanisms for like you said, just judging and rating the authenticity of the messaging that's coming at us.
Well, I think Web3 is going to do a lot to handle that. I think when authentication tokens of where the creation node came from, and will tell us whether this is authentically human created, and if it's AI created, what LLM model did it follow? Because as we've learned through some of these iterations of the AI, that they can have a very heavy skew to the way that they provide data, and they have a bias, and we need to know that. And I think with AI migrating into Web3, I think we're going to see that there's going to be some accountability to where that data come from. And again, I don't think people are going to object to AI sourced information as long as it's validated that that's authentically where it came from. I mean, we've heard the word delve, I think, more than we've ever heard in AI terminology. I mean, it's one of the most used AI terms, and delved, that's AI driven.
That's crazy.
We need more
I thought
than
that I was the only person that's noticed that. It seemed, it delves into this, it delves into that. And so when my assistants bring me content that they've created using AI, and I see that word, I say, just can you go back and just revise this some more? And
just delve into your work and get it resolved. So when we look at that and we look past AI, do you see anything that's on the forefront that's coming out on the horizon that's also just as interesting that people maybe aren't talking about in the tech space?
There's just so many tools that are coming out that solve so many niche problems, and that's been one of the things that we've had to second guess ourselves and check ourselves on, is that at our company we're trying to solve big problems in one place, but there's this trend that people want a tool that really solves a small, unique niche problem. And you take something as simple as calendaring. Remember the time before, how many emails would it take to get an appointment set, back and forth between a group of 3 or 4 stakeholders on a project? Maybe it takes 10 emails, and then you settle on an appointment only for something to come up with one of them, and then they have to cancel, and then the whole process starts again. And then something like Calendly comes along and figures out an interesting way to solve that problem. And they solved this really, really niche problem. But it's not the entire business process, but it's a very small but important part of the business process. And now that company is huge. And so I think we're going to continue to see tools that come out that solve really, really niche problems for really specific industries. And like I said, your company won't go out of business or be challenged by technology or AI, but your company will be put out of business by another company that's using technology, AI, and automation.
Absolutely. I always find it interesting when you look at the cycle of the release of different companies and products that come into a market, where you see something that comes on and says, we kind of do everything sort of okay. And that thing starts to do okay. And then you start seeing all these little micro solutions come out, like you were talking about Calendly or, MailChimp or, all these different things. And then some company comes and gobbles all of those things up, and now it becomes a Leviathan. And then you get that small thing that says, again, we can kind of do something. And you see this sort of cycle of these businesses that are coming out in these different spaces. I mean, I'm sure the VCs love them because it's a great way to incubate ideas into a relatively quick exit. But I think we definitely are going to see a lot more happen. I think some people have told me CRM space is dead. I don't believe it. I think the CRM space is just at its inception point. And there's so many things that need to change to make it a better experience so that people don't just say, man, I bought that software. We don't use all of it, but yeah, we bought it.
And for me, your comment there just warms my heart in the sense that these tools traditionally used have been, let's say, just tracking tools. They're logging tools. They're activity logging tools. They're tracking tools. And you look at a typical CRM like Zoho, HubSpot. You have your contacts module. You have your opportunities module. You have your invoices module. And what are you looking at? You have a small summary and you have a bunch of lists of invoices or lists of contacts, and you click into it and you have some details on whatever that record is. And I said to my CTO the other day, I said, our tool, our product is beginning to look very similar to what these are, and I hate it. I said, so we need to reinvent, and there's something missing here. And I opened up our database, literally the core of our software, and I said, I put up our database next to our user interface and the interface of Zoho and HubSpot. And I said, we might as well just give people just direct access to the database. It just looks the same. It's providing the same value. All they're looking at is lists of stuff. And I said, where is the tool in just helping the person decide, well, what's the next thing to do? And, what should I do next with this customer? Or where is this relationship going? Or what should I say to this person? Or besides the people on the screen, where is the tool in helping you decide as a business owner, as a salesperson, where should you put your attention at all? Like maybe it recognizes that your list of opportunities is really low, and that in order to hit your goal, you need to place 15 calls per day between now and the following Friday in order to hit your goal. And so there's so much that these tools can be doing to really fully understand. And that's why I've always said, and that's really why I got into this business, is that I don't think that these software companies really understand the challenges of the actual users of the tool. I think they understand the owners of large and medium companies. They understand that these owners want reports. These owners want accountability. These owners want their data safe, but they don't really understand the day-to-day challenges of the salesperson, the day-to-day challenges of the guy going into the house and fixing the electricity or unclogging the toilet. And so that's always been our goal, is to try to figure out, well, let's really understand the users of these tools and help them get through their day better.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's so critically important to understand the user experience. I mean, have a good sense of what the executive experience is, and then bring that all together with good systems and models and process first and technology second. Right. I think it's a beautiful way of going. Beautiful. Well, for people to reach you, the best way to reach you is go to segwick.com is the easiest way to get a hold of you and talk to you to help them really explore what they need as a business first, and then talk tech second. But man, it still was a great time talking tech with you as well, because I mean, we all love to geek out every now and then, and tech is a wonderful space to spend in to hit that goal. So thank you very much for hitting both of those, which are two of my favorite things.
Thanks, Steve. And like you said, just visit us at segwick.com, segwyk.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much there, Pete. And we will see you guys again on the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. We'll see you on the next one.